So, listen to this. About a year ago, Jadon Sancho was on top of the world. He literally had Neymar saying he was one of the players he liked to watch the most, a special player that reminded him of himself. Fast forward to last month, and suddenly you have Paul Parker saying that at this rate, Sancho will end up being the worst transfer in the history of Manchester United. It was already unbelievable how far he had fallen in such a short time, but somehow, things have gotten worse. Sancho was not called up for the World Cup. If there's any doubt that this has deeply affected him, well, let me tell you that he has completely blacked out his Instagram, and his last post read, "Family is at the root of everything that I do, and it's also the root of everything that I create." But what happened, and what does all of this mean? Looking back at his past, it's easy to find some answers. Back when his life still seemed like the beginning of a fairy tale, Sancho was living in South London. To foreigners like myself, this place might sound very average at first, but a deeper look shows it really isn't. The Guardian has estimated that 15% of English football players have come from a 10-mile square radius in that area. It's the beating heart of English football, but ironically, anyone who lives there can tell you that a young Sancho could pull off tricks that would make your heart skip a beat. These are the roots that he was talking about. It was there, in those cages as he likes to call them, that he became Sancho. It was there that he met his friend and Arsenal player Reece Nelson, and it was there that the two were found by Holmes Lewis, who at the age of 7 took Sancho to Watford. But it was also there that Sancho had to face a lot of far more unsavory things. South London was not the safest place for a kid. Even Sancho was known for being a great influence, getting the other kids to go on runs and train with him, ended up having to deal with a lot. Just 2 years ago, one of his childhood friends was stabbed to death. He was a member of the rap group the Harlem Spartans, all of them supposedly close to Sancho during his youth, and currently not only are 2 of them in prison, but 2 others have been killed. In a way, moving to Watford was what allowed him to get away from all of this, since he had to move into a boarding school in the area in order to be able to get to training every day. From the moment he arrived, he told one of the coaches, "I want to play for England, and I want to play for one of Europe's top clubs. I want to make my family proud." And if at first these seemed like some big requests, quickly they realized Sancho was special. Not only was he skilled, but he didn't give in to the pressure. After all, back in the cages, he had felt it already. One misplaced pass, and there would be another kid on the sidelines waiting to take your place. By the age of 11, he had made it. Chelsea and Arsenal were after him already. Still, he decided to stay at Watford for a bit longer, so he could enjoy a more normal life. No matter what, by the age of 14, he finally gave in and joined Man Utd for a fee of just £66,000, which quickly proved to be a bargain. Sancho was completely obsessed with snatching every Player of the Tournament award he could, and while many of the players partied all weekend, he would travel to London every time to see his family. As ironic as it may seem, it was this willingness to take on more responsibility that proved fatal for Sancho's time at City. Impressed with his attitude, Guardiola called him up for the senior training sessions after he turned 17, assuring him he would get the game time he deserved, but in reality, it never came. While negotiating his contract renewal, problems arose as they discussed his wages, and suddenly, the squad was getting on a plane to the USA without him. Sorry for interrupting the video, but there's something I gotta show you. First of all, many of you are still probably seeing my face for the very first time, so if you're one of those, hi. This is me. So pretty much, I've created a second channel. And for the last week or so, I've been posting there every day. So if you're struggling to keep up with the World Cup, cause you know, it's 4 matches a day, it gets tough, or maybe you would enjoy watching me cry about Fernando Santos and his dinosaur age tactics, well, if any of that sounds good to you, just go over there and subscribe. I promise it's worth it. If you like the videos on this channel, you're most definitely gonna like the videos on that one. So yeah, thanks a lot, I'll see you there, and go back to the Sancho video, it's a pretty good one. Just 2 months earlier, Sancho had led the under-17 England national team to the final of the Euros, being involved in 10 of their 15 goals, taking the Player of the Tournament award, and becoming one of the world's most notorious young talents, despite their loss in the final. But still convinced he would not be afforded any game time in a squad as stacked as Man Utd, he decided to turn his back on the club and look for somewhere else to shine. That place was Dortmund. After a £10 million transaction, Sancho entered the greatest chapter of his career. Surrounded by the likes of Götze, Royce, Pulisic and Alexander Isak, Sancho was brought in hopes of replacing Dembele, who is now off to Barcelona, even taking his number 7. and after half a year playing mostly with our youth squad, he was given his first start for the main team. Still, he had to deal with 3 injuries over that period, and it was only in the next season that he was catapulted into world-class status. At first he was just supposed to be kept in a secondary role, but then Christian Pulisic went through 5 different injuries in a single season, forcing Sancho to switch sides and take on a role as a right winger. The thing is, he was so good at it that after, even if Pulisic was fit, Sancho would be the one to play regardless, and from that moment on, it took off. In October, he was the league's player of the month. Funnily enough, at the same time his childhood friend Reiss Nelson, who had now moved to Offenheim, was named Rookie of the Month. In November, he got his international debut with England. By April, he had become the Bundesliga's youngest ever player to score 10 league goals, and by the end of the season, despite Dortmund falling behind Bayern Munich in the later stages, Sancho finished the campaign as the top assist provider and the player with the second most goal contributions, only behind the great Robert Lewandowski. That was 13 goals and 20 assists, despite playing just 2,900 minutes, 1 contribution every 89 minutes, at just 19 years old. However, if anything he had done so far was minimally impressive, his start to the new season made sure it all looked meaningless. He started the year with a goal and an assist in a 2-0 win over Bayern to steal the Super Cup from the Giants, and by Christmas, Sancho had scored 12 and assisted another 12, a contribution every 75 minutes, which impressively wasn't enough to warrant him any award, placing second in the Golden Boy in favor of João Felix and second in the Copa Award behind Matthias de Ligt. Still, even if he didn't get an award for Christmas, he got something else even better. Erling Haaland joined Borussia Dortmund. At first, his impact on Sancho wasn't all that incredible, with a bunch of things coming in a way. The pandemic. Kind of ironic that I coughed, huh? But as I was saying, about a year after Haaland's arrival, they popped off. Over the second half of the season, Sancho was involved in 24 goals as Dortmund managed 11 wins in a row, and among all of this, their performances in the German Cup were by far the most impressive, with Sancho getting 10 goal contributions in 6 matches, with the duo getting 2 goals each in the final against Leipzig to win their first major trophy and only the club's second in a space of 9 years. In fact, before that final, Gerd Müller had held the record for youngest player to score a brace in the German Cup for 54 years. And they both broke it that day. And trust me, that wasn't the only record that was broken by Sancho that year. He became the youngest ever to reach 50 goals in the Bundesliga and also the fastest to do it in just 99 matches. And if that's not enough, with his 17 goals and 16 assists in the Bundesliga, he became the first Englishman since Matt Le Tissier in 1995 to get more than 15 goals and 15 assists in a league season. He had proved to everyone that his talent was immense, that he was undeniable, except for the fact that this is the exact moment when Gareth Southgate decided to deny him of any proper game time, providing him with only 97 minutes at the Euros, despite the fact that prior to the tournament, he had assured the media that players would be picked solely on form. And since Sancho's form was pretty much out of this world, it begs the question, who was possibly doing better than him? Over the months prior to the tournament, Rashford had slowly entered the worst period of form of his career. Sterling had scored a single goal in 4 months for his club and was repeatedly being benched in the Champions League. Saka was yet to blossom into the player he is now, and just like Sterling had scored only 1 goal in 4 months, and Grealish had missed 12 out of Villa's last 16 league matches through injury. When asked why Sancho wasn't playing, Southgate only said, "We have more explosive options and Sancho is young, experiencing a big tournament for the first time." But well, Saka was younger and less experienced at the international stage, pulling far inferior numbers than those of Sancho at the time, and still got 3 times more game time than him. If the lack of game time wasn't already infuriating enough for Sancho, then Southgate had the brilliant idea of bringing him on in the final 1 minute before the end of extra time, forcing him into the penalty shootout and putting the destiny of his entire country on his shoulders. Something that apparently he was now old enough and experienced enough to handle without even a proper warm-up. It shouldn't have been shocking to anyone that he missed. However, even if things with the national team weren't the best, Sancho kept attracting great interest from many clubs, above all Manchester United, who had been chasing him for months by then and finally secured his signing in 2021. With Sancho coming back to the Premier League, the prodigal son was expected to blow everyone away, take the league by storm, and force his way into the national team. But in the blink of an eye, we were already well into December, and he had only played the full 90 for United in 2 different occasions. With Solskjaer being replaced by Rangnick and Ronaldo's unexpected return overshadowing Sancho's €85 million transfer, it was like Sancho had performed a disappearing act in record time. It took him 3 months to get his first goal contribution, and by the end of the season, 8 of those were all he had to show for himself. Now with Erik ten Hag as the coach, his second season has still been as painfully average as the one before it, and a few fans still clinging to the hope that he will come back to his old form were forced to face reality when the national team squad for the World Cup was announced, with Sancho's name nowhere to be seen. But what went wrong? First of all, it's time to face the fact that the numbers he hit at Dortmund could not be easily replicated anywhere else. They were as much a result of Sancho's talent as they were a result of the perfect fit between their setup and Sancho's profile as a player. In short, it was like Dortmund had been built for him, which was made evident by the way he went from greatly outperforming his expected goals to substantially underperforming at United. It makes sense. Haaland was lethal, fast and left-footed, which meant he was perpetually ready to receive Sancho's through passes and convert them into assists. Being an especially gifted creator and carrier in transitions, it is also no shock that Sancho thrived in the Bundesliga, especially with Guerreiro right behind him, who is exceptional at providing support for a player with these characteristics. While at United, not only does the league's playstyle not provide him with the same game scenarios in which he excels so frequently, but the players around him are in no way conducive to his playstyle. None of the fullbacks, especially new signing Malacia, are able to or have been instructed to play in any way resembling Guerreiro's style. Ronaldo up front is nowhere near as mobile as Haaland, and even Bruno and Eriksen are far more passive than Bellingham and Marcus Royce, far more likely to stay behind and hope for their own opportunity to cross into the box than to play 1-2s with Sancho attempting to pierce the opposition's defense, which is why he keeps repeatedly passing backwards. Things seem hopeless. Especially with Haaland now moving to the same city as Sancho, it must be heart-wrenching for him to watch from afar as his old partner completely takes over the league he's been incapable of even leaving his mark on. With the total cost of his contract rounding up to €150 million, it is clear why the fans seem so determined to find answers. But if it serves you of any consolation, at least it seems he's also as determined as ever to fix up, adapt and get back on top, as he's been constantly spotted in private training sessions ever since the World Cup began.